Welcome to Get a Word In, a podcast about content marketing. I'm your host, Adam Walker. I'm passionate about sharing stories and knowledge through content, especially in the form of podcasting. In fact, I co-founded Edgewise.media, a podcast-first marketing content agency. On this show, I interview content marketers at some of the top companies in the world and discover what's working for them, what isn't, and most importantly, what's next. So stay tuned and get ready for some great content about content marketing. My guest on the show today is Gwen Lafage. Gwen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be there, and great pronunciation.
Well, I had a good coach. So Gwen, let's start with you. Tell our listeners, who are you? What are you about? What do you do? What do your days look like?
Okay, so Gwen Lafage, I'm VP of Brand and Content at a company called Cinch. Cinch is the Customer Communications Cloud. We are a global communications cloud provider. You can also call it CPaaS, Communication Platform as a Service. We are a pretty large company of about 4,000 people across the globe in 60 different locations. About me, I come from the agency side and work with creative agencies for most of my career. I started in consumer brands, working for Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble back in the day. Then I moved to San Francisco, and that's when I discovered the beautiful world of B2B tech and started working with tech companies in Silicon Valley before joining one of them after moving to Stockholm. So I'm a world traveler, I guess, and lived in a lot of different countries, from France, the UK, Sweden, the US, in 2 different locations, and I'm now based in Atlanta.
Oh, love based in Atlanta. I'm based in Atlanta too, so it's always good to meet more people based here. So we're here to talk about content marketing. So my first question is always what is working right now? What are you focused on? What are you excited about? What's working well for you?
So I think what's working is trying to, that will sound a bit cliche, but I guess deliver value and answer people's questions in a very open, genuine, and free way, and becoming kind of a trusted advisor along the buying process without putting in place too many obstacles for people to discover who you are and what advice you have to give. So I think that's where I see the trend. And when I say that in a free and open way, I mean not gated, not behind a million different forms, not asking them the name of their pet before they can read your ebook, so I think that's kind of attitude of being very genuine on wanting to help your audiences with your content, I think is what people want. And I think people are a bit tired of this clickbait, lead magnet, whatever you call it, way of doing content marketing. It doesn't mean there isn't a place for that, right? I think there is a place for that, and some content might be gated, but I think overall as a strategy is how can you help your audiences navigate the complexity of the world we're in and genuinely want to provide that kind of advice and guide them, right? So having this kind of guiding approach rather than a selling approach from the content perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like what you're saying is have the buyer's best interest in mind at all times, sort of almost regardless of your sales interest, right? Because if you're giving away the right information, if we're giving enough value to the customer, we're building that relationship, and hopefully then they'll choose to buy from us versus us sort of holding the carrot in front of them and making them sort of run after it, right?
I truly believe in this approach. If you ask me if we're executing it in that way at Cinch, I will say not 100%. It is a hard shift to make. And I think the bigger the company, the harder the shift is. I think it is I think everyone will agree on the theory, right? On oh yeah, we should definitely be helpful to our audience and know them very well and get that kind of understanding of the audience so that we can actually know what they dream about at night and be able to deliver that to them so that they start trusting us before they are ready to buy. I think everybody agree that probably every marketer will agree with that kind of approach on like we're there to guide and help our audiences. When it comes to like how we do it and like the reality of it, there's a lot of things that come into place, right? Like the sales team need their leads, like you need to deliver kind of faster ROI on what you produce. There's like SEO, like there's a lot of other elements that come into play that change a little bit than the approach that we take as content marketers. So it's how you kind of combine both that is interesting. And some companies do it extremely well, and most of them do a good, okay job.
Well, that's why we have podcasts about marketing, so we can do better than that, right? That's the goal. So, okay. So the next question, related to content marketing, what is not working right now? What are you avoiding? What are you dialing down?
I would say that probably less of gated type of white paper that you will promote kind of once or send once to a database and then go die into what I call the kind of cemetery, the type of like graveyard of resources on your website, right? Like the resource section on the website. I think there is like a way to kind of do those and provide the same value through important those type of paper, and they have a place maybe in the buyer journey when it's more kind of a very sales-led type of go-to-market. But overall, I think like they used to be kind of the focus of the marketing team a few years ago, and will pump out like all of those ebooks and white papers, right? Like, and I think I'm seeing that as a shift. I think more of social sharing and social interaction through the people in the company becoming the experts, and less of the top down, here's like a lead magnet type of paper that has very little value. And I will say, like, I know there's a lot of discussion on like good content, mediocre content, and like how do you get to a better place there, and companies that pump up so much content that they cannot be good content. I think I'm seeing better content out there. I think like people and marketers are like focusing on more value, regardless of what we say about ChatGPT and like all of that helps pump out mediocre content out. I don't think that's true, because every single marketer is trying to kind of do a good job with the content they put out there, right? Like I don't think someone is waking up in the morning thinking, "Ooh, I'm going to do like 3 mediocre white papers today," right?
Yeah,
it's like we all try to do good, right?
Yeah,
like,
we don't come to work to do bad work. That's not why we're here.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. I do feel like AI can give us a good starting point, and I use it for that, like as a starting point. But as far as creating finished products, just not there, and it's not compelling enough. And to your point, like there's so much really amazing content online that to get people's attention, even for a fraction of a second, requires that yours be better than average, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's maybe a little bit of a shift that is happening on the weight or the balance between content production and content distribution, and putting maybe more emphasis on the distribution than before, instead of just like keep creating, and then basically no one sees that content you make. So there's like that thing that I can see some of that balance, and I'm with you on AI, and I think that I see it as an accelerator, amplificator of what humans can do. I am quite blown away with the capabilities that already are, and I know we kind of at the beginning, but I think marketers need to embrace this. I think that like marketers that don't and already saying like, it's not good enough, I'm not going to use it, I think they're missing out, because it is quite mind-blowing sometimes what you can get from it. And depending on what you're trying to write, it is like, it really helped, especially with writer's block and like the white page, like put all of your ideas in no order. Like I am a person of ideas, but I don't always have the structure, for example. And I'll go to ChatGPT and say, okay, I want to write a blog, or I want to write like a social post about this, and that. And then it just like comes up with something, and I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. There's structure in it that I need to add my own voice and my own kind of stories and anecdotes to it. But it's a really amazing basis. Like, I think it's a fundamental shift, I think, in like for content marketing. And I think there is definitely a risk of producing like very average content if everyone kind of use it in the same way and then copy and paste and here you go is your post, right? But I think there is potential to go faster and also bring up ideas that you might not have on yourself, right? It's almost like you can brainstorm with a buddy. It's like ask your computer what they think, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, brainstorm with a buddy. I like that's a good use for it. Yeah, love that. So next question, what channels are you seeing success with? Are there any channels that you're focused on or are really seeing a lot of growth in?
We B2B tech, right? And then our buyers like go from, I guess, IT type of persona when we sell like communication infrastructure and like the connectivity aspect of communication, as well as more of the application aspect that will maybe more targeted towards marketer and CX professionals and customer care and customer support. So people that are actually creating those kind of engagement campaigns, but we also provide the core infrastructure. So very different kind of type of audiences. And I think that's also the thing is depending on who you're talking about to, you won't use the same channels, right? Like you won't like go in the same way. We, from an organic perspective, I guess on social, we do a lot of LinkedIn and focus quite a lot on LinkedIn. There's definitely potential for us to kind of improve and focus more on YouTube. I will say like from a corporate perspective, we've not really made the TikTok leap yet, but I know some of our product brands have like the one targeted more towards SMBs. They obviously targeting like, small businesses, small funders, like then they will aim more towards like Instagram and TikTok and some of those channels where those people actually sell, right? Like if we're selling communication to like the florist, like, or the hairdresser next door, like they will probably be more on those channels rather than LinkedIn. But from like an enterprise sales perspective, then I think LinkedIn and YouTube definitely big potential there. And it takes time and efforts to explore all of these channels. Our perspective has been more to do a few or one really well rather than try to do them all in a mediocre way, I guess. So I think it's good to be where your customers are for sure, but it's also important to do it well. So I think like try and double down on one channel before you try to be everywhere with the exact same content and same message. I don't think that's the approach anymore.
I love that. Okay. And I like that you're considering TikTok is what it sounds like. So
Not really, I will say, from like a corporate or sales-led perspective, but we have a large portfolio of the various brands, and we have product brands that are specific to some, like I say, SMB or like small businesses. And then for them, it definitely makes sense to go on like Instagram more. We use Instagram on the corporate level more as an employer brand channel, where like we will use like LinkedIn as also more of a marketing demand type of channel. Well, like TikTok, I think is probably more to like a slightly different audience and is relevant for some of our products, but maybe not all of them. So yeah, I think B2B tech companies, I still have to figure out like the whole TikTok thing. I think some probably do well, and maybe I'm too old. Like maybe I'll like let that to the next generation
Well,
to figure out. But
I'll tell you, it's fun. Yeah. It is fun. So yeah, okay. All right. Well, last question then related to content marketing. If you had to focus on just one thing, let's say for the next month related to content marketing, what one thing would you double down on? What one thing would you do?
So I think it depends on the objective, right? Like I think it depends of like what you're trying to do, right? Like if like the goal is to drive top of the funnel awareness, education, and drive a lot of traffic to my website, then I will double down on our blog and probably SEO type of content strategies to really drive people there and a more volume to it, right? But then if you tell me here's a set of accounts and these are the people we actually want to kind of target, then that won't be the right approach, right? Like then I will probably double down on more so leadership, come up with like our own piece of research, for example, which I think is definitely valuable from a brand awareness, educational, like trusted advisor perspective on how we can come up with our own data and our own piece of research that might be really valuable for our audience. I think it all depends on like, yeah, exactly. Who are we talking to and what are the objectives we have, right? I think otherwise it's hard to say, yeah, I'm going to double down on that. I'm also a bit proponent of social media, I guess. So I will still have, at least right now, LinkedIn as a really important channel, and having dedicated LinkedIn or video marketing strategies for LinkedIn and YouTube on how you use your internal experts to carry that message and show you actually expertise. I think that is something as well that we are actually like working on actively right now, on like showcasing our own people a lot more.
Love that. Okay, fantastic. All right, well, Gwen, this has been great. Let me recap our conversation so far, and then you can fill in any gaps that I missed. How about that? And then we'll wrap up. So, related to content marketing, for what's working, you said delivering value and answering questions in an open and free way, becoming a trusted advisor without obstacles. So without email gating and all of the other stuff that we do to make people jump through hoops, but just being there, being available, and creating great content for potential customers, potential buyers. For what's not working, you said, less gated white papers. They don't work. And that's probably very, very true. You also mentioned kind of like this concept, like single use resources, creating this one resource, you use it one time, you throw it on a pile of resources that you're never going to use again. That's not incredibly practical these days. You said we need more social sharing and interaction through people in the company with less of a top-down approach and less lead magnets because they just don't have very much value. For what channels you're focused on, you mentioned you're a B2B company, so you've got a lot of different audiences, IT, application development, CX, and marketers. And so it really kind of depends on which audience we're talking about, but you said you are on LinkedIn currently. There's an opportunity for enterprise on YouTube. You haven't quite gone into TikTok because that's not quite the right fit for you at this moment. And you said to try to do one thing really well rather than trying to be on everything and be everything to everybody. And for focus, you said it depends on the objective, which is a profoundly great answer because it does. But you mentioned blogs and SEO for like website traffic, top of the funnel. You mentioned thought leadership and independent developed research for a more targeted perspective, a more targeted audience. And then social media growth in general with a focus on LinkedIn with dedicated video marketing strategies for LinkedIn. So that's all I've got for the recap. Is that about right? Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's pretty good. I think it's like, it is important to know that like content marketing is not like a one size fit all for like every single company in every single industry for every single personas, right? Like, so I think some stuff that it's going to work for your market might not work for someone else, right? Like, I think it's the same question for like, should you do events or not do events? Well, it kind of depends. Like, there's always like this, I think marketing or marketers like this idea of like something is dying, right? It's like, oh, email marketing is dying. Well, actually, no, email marketing is not dying at all. Like, everybody is doing email marketing, and it's a very strong channel to kind of use that we haven't talked about. But again, you need kind of content for that. I think like content is such a vast subject because content cannot be the role of like one unique person at the company, and it plays a lot of different role, and we call content a lot of different things, right? Like the blog on your website, the kind of like papers and resources that we mentioned, the podcast we're doing, right? Like it goes in that vein of like delivering values and conversations in a more kind of open and genuine way. So I think like all of that really depends of like your kind of strategy. There's content everywhere, right? Like I think there's a need for content everywhere, and I think everyone in the company definitely could think about that on like how they can help out. And it's hard to make those choices sometimes on where you should focus your resources. So there's not a one strategy that can work for everybody.
No, you're right. It's got to be customized for each organization and really for each client type. So, well, Gwen, this has been great. I'm definitely going to keep you on speed dial for another call in, another interview in the near future. But in the meantime, thanks for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much. That was a fun discussion.
Thanks for listening to Get a Word In, brought to you by Edgewise.media, a podcast-first marketing content agency. To learn more about Edgewise, visit www.edgewise.media. I'm your host, Adam Walker. To connect with me, check out my blog at adamjwalker.com. Thanks for listening, and make sure to subscribe now so you don't miss our next great conversation about content marketing.